Hey, I'm Eternal Savvy.
And I'm Warped Lamp.
Welcome to The Twisted Lantern, a podcast about a single game that we're a little too interested in, Kingdom Death Monster.
So whether you're interested in game design or just want to hear two people talk for a while, this is a good place to be.
So, without further ado, let's light the lantern. Excellent. Well, welcome to episode 3, everyone, and today we're going to be talking about gear. That's right, we're not going to mid-game quite yet, because gear is something which is absolutely worth getting into, especially in early game, because there is a lot of locations and a lot of items which need some discussion. But before that, we do have to address one thing. Last time, in the previous episodes, we did mention, if in passing, that one particular aspect of survival in Kingdom Death Monster is the fact that the AI deck for monsters doesn't reshuffle, and you should take advantage of that. We are enthusiasts, as opposed to experts. And
we were wrong.
We were wrong, and we recently discovered in one of our streams that in fact it does reshuffle every time it reaches the bottom. So that being said, it bears mentioning, if you're having fun, so long as you're being consistent, if it's not affecting your play, don't worry too much. And there's a lot of rules to keep track of. Don't feel like you need to know all of them from the get-go.
Because we didn't.
Because we sure didn't, and you know what? We'll bring it up in a bit, but there is a reason why that particular mistake actually makes one of the pieces of gear a bit more valuable. But with that being said, with that correction being done, we have a lot of items to talk about today, and
we have a lot of items to talk about, and we're going to try not to just waste so much time talking about all of them.
Yeah, we really have to be concise, because not only do we have to talk about each item, we have to talk about the locations themselves, because those
and
have
the build costs and the affinities, and it's so much.
Yeah, so once again, if you are unfamiliar with the game, we are not going to be explaining the specifics of what affinities do. Just know that there are different colored affinities, and if we are referring to a direction, that is the side of the card that they show up on. So, other than that, we're going to jump straight into this. So let's start off with, first of all, the build location costs. So, Lamp, do you want to take us away with the first three, which we have gone over before, but does bear mentioning?
Yeah, so the first three places that you will most likely be getting, I don't know about your play experiences, but sometimes things vary. Most likely you're going to be getting the Bonesmith, the Skinnery, and the Organ Grinder first, which all cost one endeavor to make, which is super cheap, super efficient, and you should probably do this after the first time, provided that everyone didn't die.
Yeah, if you have a particularly large amount of deaths, i.e. 2 or more, then you may very well end up with only enough endeavor to pick up 1 or 2 locations, which isn't the end of the world, because again, one more hunt and you have all of them. Because
yeah, early game you're probably going to be floating a bunch of endeavor anyway, so it doesn't really matter all that much.
So the first 3, honestly, no reason not to pick up. That's the reason that they are costed that way. They are meant to be your 3 basics. And as such, they are all based around one of the main resources. The Bonesmith is bones, Skinnery is hide, and Organ Grinder is organs, surprisingly. After that, we probably want to talk about these 3 locations, because I think it's best if we talk about the cost of the location as we actually come to them. So let's start first and foremost. Now, if we're going by our logic and by our advice, the Bonesmith is the most important one to pick up first, assuming you haven't got all 3 endeavors to build all 3 locations. So let's roll with that first.
Yeah. Love the Bonesmith. Love the various things it offers you, because it really sucks not having weapons.
Yeah, no, just a little bit. For context, if you aren't aware, Fist and Tooth, you have to roll 8s or better to even hit with it. And then at that point, you are running off of your base strength. And if you are not running a survival of the fittest settlement, that's going to be a 0. So good luck wounding anything. So weapons, first and foremost. Now, It's pretty forgiving in the Bonesmith. Most of the costs are 1 bone, which is quite nice. And as a result of that, you can build the Bone Dagger, the Bone Blade, and the Bone Darts without too much worry for whether or not it's worthwhile. They are the smallest cost you could ever hope for in anything in this game. With that being said, there is various advantages to each of these 3 weapons, which I would say are probably the baseline weapons. So,
yeah.
Do you want to start us off with the dagger?
Yeah, sure. So the Bone Dagger, 3 speed, 1 strength, hit on a 7+. It's a very nice thing. Mostly because it's a little weird to bring it up first, but I believe this is one of, if not the only non-frail weapon that you can make out of bone. Okay, Bone Club's also not frail, but Bone Dagger's probably going to come up first. So it's really nice to be able to spend 1 bone on something that's not going to fucking break.
And it's not that bad of a weapon, all things considered. There are things with higher strength, don't get me wrong, but 3 attacks is pretty nice. It also has the added benefit of, on a perfect hit, which is a natural 10 on your dice, you gain a survival.
Yeah, now, if you manage to get somebody with ambidextrous and stick them with 2 Bone Daggers, it's not a bad option by any means.
I mean, we have had the fortune of experiencing that, and that is 6 attacks, and there have been 1 or 2 instances where they have managed to roll like 2 or 3 perfect hits on 1 attack, and then boom, up to full survival again. It's very nice.
Yeah, no, I'd say it's... God, that 1 bone can just go so far if you get the right circumstances. It is such a good weapon.
And for context, frail, the reason why we brought up that it is not frail is frail means that if this weapon strikes a super dense location, then it will break at the end of the attack, and it is lost forever. So
yeah, you don't want that.
Exactly.
And considering how you got 3 attacks, you're probably going to hit a super dense location at some point, so the confidence that you're not going to lose it is quite nice. Now, following that up, Bone Blade, 2 attacks, 2 strength, 6+, is just a perfectly fine weapon. It is frail, unfortunately, but
yeah,
it's not half bad.
I mean, I very much consider it the baseline to compare other weapons by, and you know what? I think I'm going to take the initiative here, and I'm going to say we are going to talk about comparison of weapons in the context of the Bone Blade from here on out. So remember the stats: 2 speed, which is 2 attacks, 6+ to hit, and 2 strength. That is our baseline.
Yeah, this is the margin by which all other weapons are judged, because it's just a perfectly fine middle-of-the-road weapon.
We should also mention that it is a sword, which if you are invested in getting any kind of weapon masters, sword is by and large one of the easiest proficiencies to pick up.
Provided you have Flower Knight.
And provided you have Flower Knight, it's basically free.
It's not basically free, it's completely free.
Yeah. We should also mention the red affinities on the Bone Dagger and the Bone Blade are pretty friendly, all things considered. You can't really say no to them. They are nice.
Yeah, no. You always want more red affinities. So last in this trifecta, yeah, I know. Don't worry.
Look, I know I would have gotten it out of order.
So the last of this trio is the Bone Darts. 1 attack, 7+ to hit, 3 strength. It's a ranged weapon. It's dirt cheap. I know we don't make very much use of it personally, but I think we probably should. Frankly, it's pretty nice. Especially when you're unlucky enough to fight a low-level lion with ground fighting.
Oof. Yeah, you really feel it when that happens, and that's not all that uncommon, to be frank. It's 1 bone. If you have the space in your gear grid, it is honestly a nice thing to take with you, because sometimes, you're in a position to just, rolling once with a 7+ isn't great, but if you're too far away to do any melee attacks, 1 attack's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's a lot better than nothing.
Yeah, we honestly don't make it as much as we should. It is better than we give it credit for.
Now there is one weird thing about it that I personally can't stop harping on, but it is a thrown weapon, and there's no thrown weapon proficiency, and I don't understand why.
No, it's strange. Because there is another thrown weapon in the game. I mean, granted, it's a phoenix weapon, but there is another one. It's strange that there's no proficiency for it. Oh, well.
Unless we're wrong about that, but I don't think we are.
Well, I'm sure someone will correct us if we are. But with that being said, that is the main trifecta, in that you've got lots of attacks, low strength, good baseline, and ranged.
Yeah.
Next to talk about in the Bonesmith is the Bone Axe, which costs you a bone and an organ, which is a steeper price, to be sure, but by no means a heavy price, and not a hard one to get hold of either. And the thing which is extremely nice about the Bone Axe is that it's got the same number of attacks as the sword, it hits just as easily as the sword, but it has 3 strength in addition to being savage, which is once per attack. If you critically wound, cause an additional wound, which is not going to come up all the time, but it's nice. If you get that crit and you get an extra wound, it's very nice. Downside, frail.
Yeah, downside frail, but it is basically a straight upgrade from the Bone Blade. And I don't mean basically, it literally is. It just costs a little bit more. And I think the extra 1 strength, it doesn't sound like much, but it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There has been more than a few occasions where it makes all the difference. Next up, Bone Club. This one's pretty steep.
Yeah, we personally don't use it very much. I feel like we should, because honestly, 2 attacks, 6+, 5 strength, that is nothing to sneeze at. That is a solid weapon.
But it is 3 bone, and for context, there are some crafting locations which cost 3 bone to make, so you can legitimately have yourself a dilemma of, do we want to make a new crafting location or a bone club? That being said, it is a very, very, very well statted weapon. 5 strength is actually kind of fucking ridiculous. The drawback on it is the fact that it is cumbersome, which means you have to be either standing still to use it because it requires a move action and an action in order to actually use it, or you have to be burning survival in order to dash up and then be able to use it. There is one other way to use it, which is that if you have a set of armor or any effect which allows you to do a pounce or a charge, or anything that says, like, activate a weapon at the end of this or something, then you get to ignore cumbersome. So pouncing is when an armor set allows you to, like, move 3 squares and then immediately activate a weapon. Then a bone club at that point is free to use. Situational, but powerful.
Yeah. And I think it's worth it if you want to build towards it. Then by all means, it's also worth mentioning that this is the first club you have access to,
which is relevant for the antelope.
Which is relevant for the antelope. Pained wince.
Once again, for the 3rd episode in a row, I say, we'll get to that. The antelope is like our Moby Dick. Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's accurate, but we're not talking about him right now. We're talking about Skull Helmet.
Skull Helmet costs you 2 bone or 1 skull, quite appropriately, and you know what? It's nothing to sneeze at. It's the first piece of armor you have access to, assuming you don't build the skinnery first, and it gives you 3 armor on the head location. Now, that's pretty nice. It's more than you're going to have access to in any of the early locations. The downsides of the Skull Helmet is that if you suffer a severe head injury, the Skull Helmet is destroyed. So it's not going to last forever, but it is 3 armor, nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, and it's pretty economical if you do get a skull. Like, it's because you get skulls fairly often, and like it's just cheaper. It's just cheaper if you have a skull. It's also nice if you don't particularly care about an armor set bonus and you just want more head armor. Like, those situations happen sometimes. So Skull Helmet's the one for you, maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, it is literally the weakest hit location in the game on your body because it only has one injury level, which is heavily injured. And then after that, you're immediately in the severe injury territory. So 3 armor, early game, very important. Next, and finally, on the Bonesmith location, is the Bone Pickaxe and the Bone Sickle, which both cost a bone and a leather, and require ammonia. So these are kind of like... they're not something you're going to be building immediately. You will actually need to have a leather worker up and running before you can grab these. But there is a very good reason why you might want to make them, if you'd like to tell us.
Yeah, it's because they're pretty worthwhile because both of them have their own special quality that lets you place a mineral gathering or an herb gathering event on the what's the word for it, the hunt board.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hunt phase. Yeah, you can do that there. And provided that you place this space after Overwhelming Darkness, which is something you only have to deal with on level 2 monsters, or level 1 monsters if you're exceedingly unlucky, oops,
you get a whole event where you can explore possibly caves and fields to get just absolutely butt tons of resources if you are lucky. If not, you might die.
Yeah, no, you might die, or you might have your flesh turned into crystal. So,
which is pretty
options.
Sick. Yeah.
It's pretty sick, yeah.
It also bears mentioning that these are 2 pieces of gear that have green affinities.
Yeah. They do have green affinity on the top. They are tools, which doesn't really matter unless you fought high-level Manhunter.
But, yeah, that is something which is completely optional. That is pretty much all of it for the Bonesmith, and I think that one bears the most talking about, to be honest, if only because we think that weapons are extremely important, and those are your first weapons. So, pick carefully, but don't feel like you're going to be making too big of a mistake with any of them on the first weapons.
They're all perfectly acceptable. Just grab a weapon and hit something with it.
Exactly. Next up, the next most important thing in the game is the skinnery. Armor, in other words.
Yeah.
This is going to keep you alive, which is pretty nice, all things considered.
Pretty swank. So unlike weapons, we can pretty much talk about all this in just one fat batch. Rawhide armor's really good. It's really cheap, it's really efficient, you get a lot out of it. For example, the gloves give you departing survival, which is hard to come by early game. The rawhide vest, if you match its affinities, which is really easy to do because of the armor set, you get a bonus evasion, which is really nice. The boots and the pants don't do jack shit. And the headband, if you match it up with the rawhide vest, it lets you peek at the monster AI cards, which is pretty slick.
Yes, as we mentioned at the beginning, this is the item that's made even more valuable by the AI cards being shuffled whenever they reach the bottom, because this lets you peek at the top 2 and place them back in any order you like, which, when it's shuffled, pretty big deal. Also, the boots do also give you departing survival as well, so that is 2 departing survival you'll be getting with a full rawhide set. But that's not the only reason you want a full rawhide set, is it, Lamp?
No, it's not, because Kingdom Death Monster is a super slick game. If you combine all of the same arm pieces together, you get a set bonus thanks to the power of fashion, and the rawhide set bonus is really, really nice.
Indeed, it not only gives you +1 armor to every hit location to total you up to 2 armor on every hit location, but it gives you an ability which frankly makes this armor set good even in late game, and I'm not exaggerating. What it allows you to do is it allows you, whenever you spend a survival to do a survival action, you may roll a d10 per survival that you roll, and if you get a 6 or more, you gain it back. That is quite possibly, on average, that is a 50% increase in how much survival you have. If you're really lucky, you just straight up won't run out of survival when you have this stuff on.
Yeah, it should also be noted that it's not something like you don't. It's not that you don't spend the survival, it's that you gain another survival, so if you have anything that synergizes with gaining survival, it works off of that.
And there is quite a few things which do synergize off of that, and it is honestly
A
pretty
little
broken.
absurd.
Yeah. Right. So, Rawhide, it's going to feel... You might feel like you want to move off of it quickly because, it's the starting set, but honestly, don't feel bad about not moving on from Rawhide for a long time. It is something which is very valuable even in late game. I don't think you should be in full Rawhide on all of your people in late game, but I think having one or two wouldn't be all that much of the end of the world.
If you're scrapped for resources and you're just trying to put together an armor set for someone in particular, like, you can survive on Rawhide.
Exactly. Next item in the skinnery is the drums. Now, the drums do require you to have the drums innovation, unsurprisingly, and they cost a bone and a hide. Oh, and it's worth mentioning, the other reason that the Rawhide set's great, every single piece of armor costs one hide, nothing else. It's beautiful.
Yep. It's very nice.
You get a good draw on a lion, you got a full Rawhide set. But the Rawhide drum is even nicer to have, because if you have it, when you arrive, all of your survivors gain an insanity, which, as we mentioned, is basically brain armor. And whenever you encourage, which is you spend a survival in order to stand a survivor up, everyone is affected instead. So if everyone is knocked down, everyone stands up.
Pretty nice.
Nice and
a little situational, but it is an early game instrument, and there are other things that synergize with that. I don't quite remember what, but I know there is stuff that specifically functions off the instrument keyword, so it's not a half bad one.
It is indeed, and it bears mentioning that basically all instruments are noisy, which can be good or bad. Some events in the hunt are benefited from noisy gear, others are detrimented, so just be wary of the fact that it is a noisy piece of gear.
Yeah, no, in Kingdom Death Monster, if you have objects, then it'll affect you sometimes.
Exactly. So
it's just, like, don't even bother worrying about it, but do keep track of it.
Pay attention to the keywords you have. By no means are there any that you should be, like, avoiding, but it will come up. Bandages. There is a very specific reason why you want this in early game. Now, we don't pick it up too often because the way that
stupid.
Because we're stupid, and also because of the way that we play. Bandages cost only one hide and have a blue and a green affinity, which is honestly pretty hard to come by. But you can use them by spending an action to remove 2 bleeding tokens from yourself or an adjacent survivor. And the reason that's relevant is because of the Butcher, who inflicts bleed damage.
Yeah, no, he will bleed you out. The Butcher will kill you if you are unprepared. But like we don't usually bleed out to Butcher. Like, he usually just kills us or we win. Like, those are the only options.
Yeah, it is. We have said it once or twice, but Butcher is very much either trivial or your worst nightmare. So, I found that bandages are probably more relevant in 2nd and 3rd level Butcher fights, and at that point you may very well be picking up a first aid kit, which we'll get to in the Antelope discussion.
But like even for just ordinary encounters, like a one-hide investment to be able to remove some potentially lethal bleed tokens, like, it's not that bad. Like, it's honestly really good. It's just we never use it because we like our inventory space to not have bandages in.
We also like to have our inventory space free in case we manage to pull another scrap sword.
It's very important.
Anyway, last of all on the skinnery is the Rawhide Whip, which is an interesting little weapon. You need ammonia, once again, to make this thing, so... but we have mentioned that ammonia is a very important innovation, so you may very well have the ability to make this. It's a bone and a hide. Its profile is 3 attacks at 7+, with 1 strength, which you may recognize from the dagger. The difference is, its special ability is wholly unique. It is, and I mean unique, because this is actually the only weapon in the game that has this, unless you have the Whip Mastery, I believe, which is Provoke. When you wound with this weapon, gain the priority target token, which means the monster must target you next turn. This is extremely interesting and worth consideration because it basically allows you to make a tank. If you set someone up with a very, very good armor set and you give them a rawhide whip, if they have a good enough strength to wound with pretty consistently, you can actually start to pretty consistently guarantee that the monster is targeting one person every turn. And that can make all the difference. It is dependent on you having good strength, however, because if you don't have that ability to wound, you're never going to get that provoke. And what's more, you're not wounding in the first place, so nothing's happening.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk, but if you have someone with high strength, it can be extremely rewarding because being able to effectively just remove the random targeting of monster AI is you can't understate the value of that, quite frankly.
Yeah, not to mention that this is more of a mid-game strategy, I would say, but if you have managed to pick up Surge, so you can do extra actions in your turn, and you've got yourself a shield with a good armor set, you can basically have somebody run in, attempt to wound with the whip, and then if they succeed, you can then surge to block, which means that you will be ignoring one of the hits that is guaranteed coming your way this turn. So it's a valid strategy. It's just a little hard to pull off, is all.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Skinnery.
Yeah, that's the Skinnery. So that just leaves of the original trifecta the Organ Grinder. That's another quick one to talk about because the Organ Grinder just gives you goodies that do nice things,
and they all do pretty significantly different nice things as well. So we'll summarize them since they are all pretty concise. Stone Noses, when you arrive, gain a survival and an insanity. Monster Grease, gain an evasion. If you have 3 green affinities, then you gain an additional evasion.
That's getting 3 green affinities actually pretty hard to swing, but if you can manage it, damn, is it nice.
It is. It's very nice. Evasion is probably one of the best stats in the game. Fecal Salve, shit bomb, in other words. When you depart, gain a survival, which is, again, hard to come by. Very nice. And if you are a threat, then you can smear shit all over yourself with an action, and if you have the priority target token, you remove it. And you are no longer a threat, so the monster is far, far, far less likely to target you.
Because you're less delicious now.
You are, in fact, smeared with poop. Drydecanthus, if you can get some, will allow you to gain 2 survival when you depart, which is really, really strong. And when you suffer a severe injury, you may ignore it and archive this card instead. Lucky Charm. If you can fill 2 blue affinities on your sheet, you get +1 luck. Extra crit chance. Very nice. And finally, if you have Heat, which you are guaranteed to pick up on year 5, then you can make the Monster Tooth Necklace, which is +1 strength, and if you have 2 red affinities, which is exceedingly easy to do, then you gain an additional strength, so total +2.
It's very, very nice. It's very, very good. All of these things are useful in their own right, and they're all pretty cost efficient, so you don't really have to sweat it too much.
Yeah, the most expensive one here is the Monster Tooth Necklace at a scrap and a bone. And a scrap might sound like it's hard to come by, but it is actually one of the basic resources you can pick up out of the deck.
And likely you'll be collecting a lot of them before you can even do anything with them.
Yeah. The Stone Noses are also very nice because it allows you to expend extra floating endeavor that you have because it actually only costs an endeavor, because I love the fluff of this. So endeavor is basically your people making an effort to do something. That's kind of what it represents. So what it means is Stone Noses is you just send someone out to go nose picking.
And it really weighs on them, you know?
Yeah. And the Organ Grinder has one last thing that we do need to mention. It is the first location that has an additional action that it gives you. The Augury. You can spend an endeavor to roll a d10 and see what happens. You get a +1 to your roll if you have understanding of 3 or higher, but This is the main place and the first place that you are going to be consistently kind of able to have kids. Because if you get an 8 or more, you can attempt to have a kid. Then on a 1 to 3, which is the worst result, you lose a resource, which is pretty rough. And if you do lose that resource, the survivor gains an understanding, which is a consolation prize. 4 to 7, they gain a survival. So at the very least, you're getting something out of it.
Mm-hmm. And the 1 to 3 honestly isn't all that bad if you just have resources you don't care about, like if you have a pile of lonely ants, like, you can afford to lose them.
If you have a not so lonely group of lonely ants, it is certainly not that big a deal to lose one. They are useless, honestly. There's a reason they're lonely. But yeah, and with that, we are then brought onto the
just real quick, I suppose it's worth mentioning because I don't know if we did it before. But you said Organ Grinder is the first one that has a bonus effect on it. That's not entirely true because Lantern Horde does have a bonus effect on it.
Yeah, that's true. Walk us through that in that case.
So the Lantern Horde, if you spend an endeavor, you get to nominate a survivor that has 2 or more Hunt EXP, and if there's someone who's got, I believe 2 less than them, then you give them +1 Hunt EXP. It's very nice.
If you want to be training up some weapon proficiencies early, it is a very nice thing to do. And if you just want to try and see if you can grab somebody a quick stat buff before you go into a fight, also very nice.
Yeah, it's worth remembering.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to mention before we go on about the Organ Grinder is that the thing that we end up most commonly making is Monster Grease, because that extra evasion honestly is going to save your ass on more occasions than you think it will.
Yeah. Like, and it's very easy to slot Monster Grease into your grid, like because it's hard to argue with just +1 evasion. It's very nice. And there's really not much better in the way of substitutions unless you're fighting Flower Knight.
Yeah. I look forward to when we get to talk about him. But yeah, so next up, each of these locations actually also gives you the ability to build a new location. The Bonesmith lets you make the Weapon Crafter, which is going to cost you an Endeavor, 3 bone, and a hide. And the Weapon Crafter, as we will now describe, has some very, very nice options on it.
Yeah, it's got some real good stuff in there.
Yeah. So
that we're going to have to try really hard to not talk in depth about.
Yeah, because this is, it's hard not to talk in depth about them. I think there's one item I want to talk in depth about, and that's it, on this location. But, so 3 bone and a hide is honestly, I wouldn't call that too steep, because if
it can be.
If you've been hurting for bone on a couple of hunts, which can happen, it's hard to justify. But if you have been getting enough bone that you have at least a weapon on each person, it is absolutely justified making the Weapon Crafter. Because if you have just even if you just have a bone blade on everyone, at that point it's just yeah, we need new weapons. Let's do this. So, Weapon Crafter. Where do we want to start?
Well, I suppose we could start at the first point on the list of the Weapon Crafter, which is the counterweighted axe.
This is one that we don't make as often as I would like, because I quite like the weapon. But there's a reason.
Let's not mince words here, Savvy. We just don't make the counterweighted axe, or we do make it and we don't use it.
Yeah, pretty much. The thing about it, and I think the main reason why it's often hard to justify, is because it is actually quite a lot of resources. It's 2 bone, a hide, and an organ, which, to put things into perspective, is 1 resource more than it costs to innovate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard sell, but for that hard sell, you get a weapon with 2 attacks, hits on a 6+, and has 4 strength, which is pretty legit. And if you match its red affinity, on a perfect hit, you don't even draw a hit location. The monster just gets wounded, which can be good. I think most times it is good, but you kind of remove the ability to dumb luck your way into really fun situations. I think that's part of why it's a hard sell for me, frankly.
See, I very much see it as a mid to late game item because if you in mid to late game, it's not as hard to come across resources, and the ability to not draw a hit location is far more valuable because you're encountering monsters which far more commonly have hit locations that do not have crit effects and will just fuck you. So not drawing that hit location. So early on, it's pretty much just the trap which you're going to be avoiding or particularly nasty hit locations. But in late game, yeah, it's pretty nice. Get it if you want. It's a good weapon. Reach 2's nothing to sniff at. 2 squares reach. Very nice.
Yeah, no, that's helpful more often than you'd think it is.
Yeah. Next up, the Skullcap Hammer. This is the second mace you have access to. 2 bone, 1 scrap.
I think we just straight up have never made this thing.
We have literally never made this thing. 2 attack, 7+ to hit, and 3 strength. Honestly, the 7+ to hit is what doesn't sell me on it. The special effect, however, is on a perfect hit, the monster is dazed, and they gain a -1 speed token until the end of the turn. This can only be done once per turn, so that gives it 1 less attack next turn.
Which, for higher level monsters, really nice. Because they get a lot of attacks. Hell, even on low level monsters that's nice, because they have basically no attacks.
Yeah, the thing which is the deal breaker for me on the Skullcap Hammer is honestly the 7+ to hit.
Yeah, it's not crazy about it.
Me neither. Third mace you have access to. Whistling Mace. This is
thing's
just
dumb.
It's dumb, it's funny, it's 2 bone and an organ. If you roll a 1, you wound yourself. Oh my god. That being said, it's 3 attacks at 6+ with 3 strength, which is damn good, but that's 3 chances to just fucking whack yourself in the nuts. The additional effect it has is also pretty nice. On a perfect hit, you reveal the next AI card and put it on the top or bottom of their deck. So, it's good.
Yeah, Whistling Mace, dumb. I think we've tried to use it before. We just end up knocking ourselves out. This thing's so stupid.
If I am not mistaken, I am pretty certain someone did kill themselves with one.
No, I think what happened was we got a severe injury and just canceled all of our fucking attacks.
Oh, that was it, yeah.
Stupid thing. Make it if you want a good time. Next, we got the Scrap Sword. Now this is my favorite weapon.
Indeed. Let's first of all talk about the costs before we go into when you can get it for free. So you need heat. So year 5 onwards is when you can make this thing, and it's 2 bone and 1 scrap. This weapon is ridiculously good. 2 attacks, 5+ to hit, and 3 strength. And on a perfect hit, it gains +4 strength until the end of the attack.
And if that wasn't fantastic enough, if you have a blue and 2 red affinities, which is pretty dang easy to do, then you get deadly.
Which is extra luck, which is extra critical hits.
This thing is so dumb. I love this sword so much.
It legitimately fucking shreds early game monsters. Which is hilarious, because if you get lucky, you could draw it on year 1 for free.
Like we have multiple times.
We will take this moment, even though this is not the environment episode, we will take this moment to emphasize, if there is a scrap pile anywhere on the map, if you draw a scrap pile, you are not... I'm not allowing you to ignore it. You have to go to it and attempt to get that fucking 10 to pick up a free fucking scrap sword. I am yelling. I am so enthusiastic about this.
There's a 10% chance to get a weapon that will literally break the first 5 years of the game.
It honestly makes your first couple years just free.
And even past that, it's still a good weapon.
Oh.
Like, even if you can't get it for free, it's still worth making it. Scrap sword. It's awesome.
Next up is my favorite weapon, which, if you have looked at the cover art for this podcast, you will notice I'm actually using in my little avatar.
Oh yeah, I am as well.
You're using the scrap sword in your one, and I'm using the Zanbato. So these are our two favorite weapons, respectively. The Zanbato costs a great cat bone, which you can only get from the White Lion, as well as 2 hide, which is pretty easy to get from a White Lion. It is honestly kind of bewildering that the Zanbato is not on the White Lion's build location. It is your first grand weapon. 1 attack, 6+ to hit, 6 strength, slow, frail, deadly. So slow means that you cannot attack more than once ever, even if you have extra speed. Frail means it's going to be shattering. Deadly means it's got extra luck, just per standard. And here's my favorite part, and the reason that this weapon is honestly game-changing. If you can match its top red and get a green...
which getting a green is super easy because its right affinity is green, and that slots in beautifully with a monster grease.
Exactly. So that can be activated pretty damn easily. It gives you Devastating 1. Which is whenever you inflict a wound, inflict 1 additional wound. It's... Zanbato is top tier. It is honestly great. If you are playing smart and you have yourself a cat eye circlet and you are looking at those hit locations and making sure that you are stuffing any super dents, this thing shreds enemies once again.
It is absolutely absurd. Because, like, the thing is, you don't even have to be that lucky with it to shred through enemies. Like, getting the wound is pretty fucking free.
The 6+ is... That's a 50-50 flip. Don't get me wrong, but if you have even 1 accuracy, it's in the bag.
Highly recommend it. Those are our 2 favorite weapons. Now we will talk about the rest of them with significantly less passion.
Scrap Dagger. 1 bone, 1 scrap. Requires heat. Has some pretty decent red affinities on it. 3 attacks. 7+ to hit. 2 strength. 2 strength? 2 strength! Yeah. Basically a better dagger. On a perfect hit, it gains +2 strength for the rest of the attack.
Not half bad.
Very good backup weapon.
Yeah, or, if you're ambidextrous, an awesome paired weapon.
Exactly.
That just goes for all of the daggers, or really any high-speed weapon. If you have ambidextrous, just give them 2 of them. Trust us.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the last 3 things on this location, I think we're probably actually going to leave until the Phoenix. Because they all require Phoenix parts, and it would honestly be kind of silly to talk about it now. But
we also have absolutely no experience with any of them.
Yup. But we will at least mention their names and the fact that they are built here, which is the Rainbow Katana, the Finger of God, and the Blood Sheath. I have heard that some people debate that the Rainbow Katana is the best weapon in the game. We can't speak for it yet.
We'll get there.
We will get there. And there is some extra bits you can do at the Weapon Crafter as well, if you would like to explain them for us, Lamp.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for one, you have the ability to scavenge here. God, that is not easy. Spend Endeavor, roll a d10, 1 to 5. You spend 1 survival, or you die. Kingdom Death Monster. 6 to 9, you get a Broken Lantern. And on a 10+, you gain +1 Courage. This isn't a great thing to spend your Endeavor on, but if you have literally nothing better to be doing...
then it can get you some extra scrap, which will be very useful if you have scrap smelting, which happens to be something relevant to this location as well. Scrap smelting can be special innovated here, and for those who don't know, innovations can be picked up in different ways than randomly drawing them if you special innovate. So it's basically a unique form of innovation where you spend a different amount of usually more resources, but you guarantee that you pick up that specific innovation. In this case, an endeavor to gain scrap smelting if you spend 2 scrap, 5 bone, and 5 organs.
It is a steep cost.
It is mid-late game, honestly, and the reason for that is because the reason that you would even pick up scrap smelting is because scrap smelting allows you to make iron, and it allows you to build what we consider to be the late game location of the game, which is the blacksmith. We will not be talking about the blacksmith today.
No, because we don't have any experience with it, but also we don't have an unlimited amount of time.
Indeed. With that being said, let's move on to the leatherworker, who is another very good to consider location. In order to build this thing, you are going to need to go to the skinnery, spend an endeavor, and 3 hide, and an organ.
Yeah, and in return, you get access to leather armor, which is not half bad, if I do say so myself.
Now, that is with the caveat. You get access to building leather armor if you have ammonia, because in order to make leather, you have to have ammonia. The leather worker allows you to spend endeavor, just 1, to convert any number of hide in a year into leather. So, if you don't have ammonia, you don't really have a reason to build the leather worker.
I mean, unless you're just saving it for a rainy day.
Yeah, I mean, if you have... Yeah, the only situation I would say build the leather worker when you don't have ammonia is if you have an excess of resources and you're like, we can make the leather worker for free right now, and then just pick up ammonia later.
Yeah, which is probably something you won't have to do unless you're dealing with Gorm climate, in which case, yeah, that's a safe bet.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, that being said... The costs on the leather armor, all of them cost at least 1 leather. The leather skirt is the cheapest at purely 1 leather. The boots and braces cost a hide as well. The cuirass costs a bone as well. And the mask costs a scrap as well. They have some pretty funky effects. We'll try and blaze over them relatively quickly. They all give you 3 armor to begin with, which is... very, very respectable.
Very nice.
Cuirass does nothing additional. Skirt does nothing additional. Boots, if you have both its green affinities filled up, you may move 1 space at the end of your act. Braces, when you leave, gain 2 survival. And the leather mask has arguably the best benefit, which is when you depart, gain +2 insanity.
Pretty nice. Not too flashy, but you know what? It gets the job done, and it's all just good armor.
Indeed, indeed it is.
But what about the set bonus, Savvy?
Well, let me tell you, the set bonus is pretty nice as well, because not only does it give you an additional armor to all your hit locations to pop you up to a very, very nice 4 armor on every location, you also ignore Bash. And Bash, for those who don't know, is knockdown. So, yeah, pretty damn good.
Never having to worry about getting knocked down again is pretty nice. And if you just make this guy hold a drum, then he can always be in charge of propping up all of your dudes who get knocked over like dominoes. It's pretty fresh.
Yeah, exactly. Hot strat. If, as Lamp just said, you got a leather guy, give him a drum.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, indeed. There is the round leather shield, which is a very good item. Now, it does act as a weapon, but that is not the important thing. I'll blaze through it. It has 1 attack at 8+ for 1 strength. Pretty bad. That's not why you want it. You want it because it gives you 1 armor to all your hit locations. 1 item gives you 1 armor to all hit locations.
Yeah, if you're rocking the full set and a round leather shield, that bumps you up to 5 everywhere, which is really, really good.
And the final cherry on top of the cake, you can block with it, spend an action, and ignore 1 hit the next time you are attacked. If you get to a point and you literally have somebody... If you don't have enough to build armor still, if you have enough to build a shield, that is basically the equivalent of dropping a rawhide set on someone. It's a leather, a bone, and a hide. It is frankly one of the best investments you could possibly make. And then there's the Hunter's Whip. Hunter's Whip is pretty interesting. 2 leather and a bone, and it has blue affinities. It is 3 attacks at 6+ with 3 strength. And if you have both its specific blue affinities filled up, on a perfect hit, discard a mood in play. And moods are usually pretty nasty.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty meaty weapon. It's got an interesting, albeit a helpful, albeit niche ability. But discarding moods is pretty nice because some get really bad. Like Butcher. Butcher has like 1,000 moods, and if they're all in play at once, they're the worst. Not because you'll be doomed, but because you won't remember all of them and feel bad because you're cheating.
Yup, it has happened on more than one occasion. I think at one point we had like 6 things to keep track of with him every turn. It was rough.
It was so much garbage.
And but otherwise, leather stuff is very, very, very valuable and definitely worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
The last place that we will touch on today is...
Last place and probably the briefest place for reasons that are going to become very obvious very quickly.
If you go to the organ grinder and you spend an endeavor, 3 organ, and a hide, you can make the stone circle. The stone circle is the antelope's crafting location. We will get to the rest of the gear on this location, because all of the gear requires the antelope resources, except 3 of them, which is the charms. Now, if you're willing to drop 3 organs and a hide and an endeavor into the building the stone circle early, you can gain access to the green, blue, and red charm. They respectively cost 3 organs each. They each give you a affinity for free of their color, i.e. red, green, and blue, and give you the additional effect that if you have 5 total of their given color's affinity, you'll gain Unstoppable if you have the red charm, Undeathable if you have the green charm, and Unshakable if you have the blue charm. Lamp, tell us what they do.
Sure. So Unstoppable, the red charm's power, makes so that when you attempt to wound, instead you roll 1d10 on a 1 to 5 fail and a 6 to 10 wound. I'm not sure when this will be helpful to you, but I'm sure it's somewhere.
If you're rolling with low strength weapons for some reason at this point in the game, grab a red charm. Yeah, why not? If you could grab 5 fucking red affinities and somehow not have extra strength, grab it, I guess.
I mean, there's bound to be something that has monumentally untouchable toughness, so sure, on that, I'm sure it'll be really helpful. Then, the green charm, which gives you Undeathable. If you would die, roll 1d10. On a 6+, you don't! Which is pretty nice, I think.
It's... Honestly, we've been tempted in the past to build the stone circle purely for this charm, until you realize that it's the reason it's so good is because it's the green charm.
And that's really, really hard to swing.
Green affinities are honestly the hardest to pick up in the game. But if you have a Acanthus Doctor, I believe is the name of it, by some miracle, then it's great. Last charm.
Last charm. Poor green charm. We'll never use you. Last charm is the blue charm, giving you Unshakable, which is when you draw a trap, roll 1d10 on a 6+, discard the trap, and reshuffle the deck. Not too shabby.
Probably the easiest one to pick up. Blue affinities are not too hard to grab. And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good effect.
And no, it's a damn good effect. I'm going to say that it's probably easier to get Unstoppable procced because red is so prevalent, but also that one's less useful.
Yeah, like, put it this way. The the kinds, because there is a theme around each of the affinities that you may have noticed if you've looked through or been particularly keen at listening to our ramblings this episode. Red affinities tend to be attached to aggressive or very, very powerful items. Blue affinities tend to be associated with support or utility items. And green tends to be associated with either defensive or niche items. And it's when you have red affinities as a result of a 6 strength weapon that flipping a coin to wound instead of rolling a dice starts to become relatively niche. I think the only place where red charm really starts to shine is in late game when you're facing stuff that has like 15 to 18 toughness. So red charm, very, very specifically useful in end game. I can imagine it being good if you really, really want to bring in a specific weapon to a late game.
That sucks.
Yeah, like, if you want to bring in... Actually, I can see it working with a bone dagger. If you want to bring in a 3-speed weapon that gives you survival on a perfect hit, but it's got dick all for strength, you could drop a red charm on that guy.
Yeah, I guess you could make it work. I'm just not too eager to make it work.
Yeah.
I'd honestly rather just have big fat numbers and hope for the best. Yay, games!
The last thing to mention about the stone circle, which does actually come into play even if you aren't hunting antelopes, is that if you have Forbidden Dance, which is possible relatively early game if you're picking very specific innovations, you can spend an endeavor to do a harvest ritual. A harvest ritual is spend any number of monster resources to draw an equal number of basic resources.
Which is pretty slick, honestly.
Say you drew too many bones. Just do it again.
Yeah, just fix it. say you're fighting something like the Gorm, who just loves spilling his organs and nothing else, but you don't need those. That's fine. Just do it again.
The stone circle has its purpose. It's just that we don't like its main purpose.
We'll get to that.
Right. I think that at this point, I think we probably have like a little bit of extra time that we can use up to just quickly summarize some strategies or some gear loadouts which may not be immediately apparent from us just gushing or blazing past certain items. So this is going to be a little bit off of the cuff because I don't think we've really made notes on this, but we
sure haven't.
Yeah, we sure haven't. Lamp, is there any particular setup that you've been a real big fan of from these locations that you think is really worth mentioning?
Yes. I really like the scrap sword. I like the scrap sword a lot. And it's kind of tricky to do, but if you can manage a setup to get the extra luck from luck charm, it feels so good. Because I think if you have a cat's eye circuit and like a bandage, I think that works.
Yeah, because the scrap sword itself has a blue that can match with a leather cuirass, and the lucky charm with the bandages would also pick up that.
Would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really really nice because it synergizes so great with the sword weapon mastery, which we won't go into too much, but basically, if you get a crit, it lets you be a cheater. It's great.
And yeah, the crits, like, put it this way. Crits are nice when they happen. It's not something that you should be banking on, but when you can actually put your crit chance up to like a 7+, which is doable, all of a sudden, hunting regular quarries becomes a lot more lucrative because you are just literally carving pieces off of them.
Mm-hmm. You know, big fan of the dumb, like, crit fishing build. It's it's super rewarding. I guess just additionally, having a monster grease with the matching affinities on the rawhide set, it gets you 2 evasion early on, and if you have survival of the fittest, that gives you 3, which is really nice.
Yeah, I mean, that is literally turning a almost guarantee of 2+ on the lion and most other quarries into a 5+ every time? Yeah, all of a sudden...
And that's just for their accurate attacks.
Yeah, if you're facing something like the Butcher, he's not hitting you much.
He's fucking doomed.
If you get lucky enough to actually pick up some tall grass again in the Butcher fight, and you have a setup that gives you 3 evasion, you can get 5 evasion by just standing in the grass, and then all of a sudden the Butcher, a nemesis, is hitting on 9s.
Yeah, can't understate how great evasion is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm also gonna go with the setup that I really like taking for the Zambato. We briefly touched on it, but if you have that monster grease, you can match that up with your Zambato to get that green affinity, and the amount of red affinities in the game makes it relatively damn easy to pick up that top affinity on the Zambato. The place where you're most likely going to pick that up, though, is the leather mask. Frankly, I've run characters who aren't even doing a full leather set. They will just have, like, a shield, the leather mask to activate the Zambato, the grease to activate evasion, and then, like, a rawhide vest with its affinities matched up to give it the extra evasion. It doesn't give you the full set bonus, don't get me wrong, but it's this weird little, like, puzzle piece setup, which weirdly kind of works and turns someone into an absolute monster. Alternatively, you can give them a drum if you don't want evasion. I don't know why you wouldn't want evasion, but you can do that.
Or if you actually like armor, you could go through the trouble of slotting in Iron Dagger, which fits in just beautifully, and that's not frail, so it lets you hit super dense locations if you gotta.
Indeed, that is very much... I highly value insanity, because there's been more than a few occasions where getting a brain trauma has really ruined you, but there is actually a fairly decent reason to pick up a scrap dagger instead of a Zambato. If you're an idiot and you are not checking the deck while using the Zambato, the scrap dagger, as well as activating the Zambato, gives you a backup weapon if you fucking shatter it on a monster's teeth or something. The additional reason why you might not want the leather mask instead, less brain armor means more likely to get a brain trauma, and one of the brain traumas is Frenzy. And Frenzy is very uniquely useful with the Zambato because it allows you to ignore slow and gives you an extra speed. So suddenly you're attacking twice with your Zambato every turn.
Yeah, no. Also, if you this is a lion thing, but if you happen to pick up a pair of nuts, you can make a frenzy drink and just do that on command.
Yeah, it is. It's a very specific situation, but that is the reason I really like the Zambato. It honestly has a really, really friendly affinity setup, and it lets you kind of just mix and match a couple of different combinations and see what you end up with. And the reward for doing that is devastating, literally.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a good point to end off on.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I guess we have just one or two other things to mention, which are pretty exciting. Which is a hell of a way to lead into a very big uncertainty that I'm about to say.
It's really exciting. We don't know, though.
So we have listened, and I have been going through the effort of getting this podcast to be an actual real-ass podcast. So it is currently up for review on the iTunes store. It will hopefully be approved by the time that this episode is up on YouTube. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can now catch all of our episodes on iTunes. In addition to that, we are I am also working to get this onto Player FM, which, while not one of the bigger podcasting sites, I will attest to the fact that the app is pretty damn decent. I also personally use Player FM to listen to people like the McElroy brothers, who I also highly recommend. But give that a shout as well if iTunes isn't your deal, because I know that a lot of people aren't really keen on Apple products. So, in addition to that, is there anything else that we want to briefly mention? Our stream.
Oh yeah, we did do a stream. We had a good time until the end.
Yeah. So if you have been listening to this in podcast form before finding us on YouTube, you may very well not know about the fact that we did actually do a stream before this. We decided to do one of our research games online, and as a result of that, we live streamed it to a pretty damn good audience. It was a really good energy there. We will provide the link in the description of the podcast, and you can check it out there. If not, you can check out all of our Kingdom Death streams at twitch.tv/eternal_savvy.
Or if you want to say fuck that and just listen to me instead, swing by twitch.tv/SurpriseRoundRPG.
Lamp has some pretty damn good content, so go check it out.
If I do say so myself. It's a team effort, but we do try our hardest, and Savvy is there for a couple things, actually.
Mostly fuck around games at the moment, but I'm sure I'll turn up in more stuff.
Here's hoping.
Here is hoping. Right, well, with that, I hope that we have at least shed some light on some of the gear and what might be a good choice, as opposed to just parroting what's here. There is hopefully some insight that you can take away from this.
Yeah, I hope we didn't ramble absolutely incoherently.
Yeah, and if we did, then, well, I guess you just listened to an hour of rambling.
Sucker!
All right, and with that, I guess it's time to douse the lantern.